In the golden blaze of the Gilded Age, wealth was not just accumulated, but flamboyantly paraded, with fortunes so vast they seemed beyond the reach of downfall. As the chandeliers dimmed and the orchestras quieted, the lineages of some elite families took unexpected turns towards obscurity. Indeed, these once storied dynasties, equipped with seemingly unassailable riches and influential connections, faced a series of dramatic reversals. For some, it was a precipitous fall into financial ruin triggered by reckless investments or unforeseen economic shifts. Others saw their social and political influence wane, eroding their standing in the echelons they once commanded. Then there were those who chose to disappear, deliberately receding from the public spotlight, their legacies fading into the annals of history as silently as they had once dominated it. Today we chronicle the rise and retreat of Gilded Age families who disappeared from the precarious pedestal upon which the fortunes of this era were built, highlighting a time when splendor could be as fleeting as it was brilliant. Imagine you are a multi-billionaire tycoon in the twilight of your life, standing before the vast empire you've built from the ground up. As you decide where to leave your fortune, you look into the eyes of your heirs, trying to discern who among them you trust enough to handle your life's work. Indeed, it would be a moment of profound introspection and decision-making, echoing the choices faced by industrial robber barons of the past. And one such magnate, Henry Clay Frick, confronted this very dilemma. His legacy, however, took a turn that many might not anticipate. In the cutthroat world of the steel industry, Frick's business practices earned him infamy. Yet, perhaps as a counterbalance to his ruthless pursuits, he also became known for his lavish spending on art and cultural artifacts. Turning their backs on the race to accumulate more wealth, the Frick children found their callings as scientists, professors, and artists, quietly choosing to let the mighty $3 billion Frick family fortune dwindle away, setting the name apart from old money families whose wealth seems to grow by the minute, like the Rockefellers and Mellons. In today's episode, we dive into the lessons learned from the Frick family fortune, the complexities of inheritance, and the nuances of old money as we describe the Frick family, when a $3 billion inheritance is given away. Henry Clay Frick, that titan of American industry and a maestro in the art of making bank, didn't just climb the ladder of the Industrial Revolution. He practically built a new one, planting himself firmly as the world's second richest man at his peak. And his wealth, painstakingly forged in the fires of the coke and steel industries, didn't just surpass the fortunes of mere mortals. It even outshone that of his mentor and partner in industrial alchemy, Andrew Carnegie. But Frick was no one-trick pony. His shrewd business sense, tireless dedication, and knack for spotting golden opportunities in coke and steel turned his ventures into the Midas touch of the era. H.C. Frick & Company wasn't just another player in the game, it was the game, fueling the furnaces of steel magnates like Carnegie himself. By joining forces with Carnegie in 1882, Frick entered the steel industry's major league and became its MVP, riding the wave of America's steel-fueled ascendancy. But let's not box Frick into the all-work and no-play category. The man had a flair for the finer things in life, a veritable connoisseur of the arts with a taste as refined as the finest aged wine. His New York City mansion was a temple to luxury, and a Beaux-Arts masterpiece that shouted opulence from every limestone block. Built between 1912 and 1914, this Fifth Avenue fortress was more than a dwelling. It was a vessel for Frick's monumental art collection, destined to become the Frick Collection Museum. And the mansion's interiors? Think of them as the velvet glove on the iron fist of industry, with 16 rooms that were less rooms and more sanctuaries for the soul. This was a home built not just to live in, but to exhibit a collection that would make any art lover weep with joy. The so-called living hall alone, virtually unchanged for over 76 years, is an icon of Frick's enduring vision of grandeur and grace. And what of the art? Frick didn't just collect paintings. He collected masterpieces from Rembrandt's enigmatic The Polish Rider to Goya's dynamic The Forge. His collection was a roll call of art history's VIPs: Bellini, Vermeer, Gainsborough, El Greco. Each piece a badge of honor, each brushstroke a narrative of Frick's journey from steel magnate to patron saint of the arts. Today, the Frick collection stands not just as a museum, but as a cathedral to creativity, housing over 1,500 pieces that span centuries of European art. Thus, when Frick took his final bow in 1919, he didn't just leave behind a pile of cash. He left a treasure trove so immense it's hard to wrap your head around it. Imagine a fortune so vast that today it would be worth billions, a sum so eye-watering it underscores the monumental empire he built, brick by coke-fired brick. Clocking in at an estimated $145 million at his earthly departure, think a cool $2.9 billion today, Frick's fortune was the stuff of legends. Therefore, from humble origins to towering over the American Industrial Revolution, Frick's story wasn't just about making money, it was about making history. However, making the money for yourself is one thing, teaching your children, and then their children, requires an entirely different skill set. In order to learn exactly what happened to the mighty Frick fortune, let's roll back the gold-encrusted timepiece and start our journey in the rolling hills of rural Pennsylvania. Yet, as the story unfolded, it led to a pivotal moment that would shock both admirers and critics alike. In the early settlements of Pennsylvania, where opportunity beckoned the bold, the forebears of Henry Clay Frick made their mark. Originating from Swiss and German stock, these pioneers embodied the spirit of those seeking a fresh start in the New World. And their endeavors, primarily rooted in agriculture, contributed to the development of Western Pennsylvania, setting a stage far removed from the future industrial exploits of their descendant. Indeed, John W. Frick, Henry's father, was no stranger to this agricultural life, but harbored ambitions that stretched beyond the confines of farm work. Born into a modest farming environment, John was a man who saw value in education and the promise of innovation, despite the family's financial limitations. And Elizabeth Overholt Frick, Henry's mother, brought to the family a legacy of industry from the Overholts, a family known in their locality for their work ethic and for making a mark in the distilling business. Elizabeth's influence imbued the family with a resilience and a strong sense of community, foundational values in the small town of West Overton, Pennsylvania, where Henry was born. Thus, the upbringing of Henry Clay Frick reflected these principles of hard work and community service. Born on the 19th of December 1849, as the eldest of 6 children, Henry's early life was framed by the simplicity of rural America, an existence marked by the labor of farming and the tight-knit community ties. And his education, starting in the local schools, revealed an early inclination towards business and a particular talent for numbers. Despite showing promise and a hunger for knowledge, financial pressures led to a pragmatic shift in Frick's path. Leaving Otterbein College to return home at 16, he began working as a clerk in a Pittsburgh mercantile firm, a decision dictated more by necessity than choice. This period of work outside the academic sphere offered Frick practical insights into the business world, an unplanned but invaluable continuation of his education. And these clerkship years were more than a stepping stone. They were a transformative period that allowed Frick to internalize the mechanics of business and the intricacies of the market. Therefore, this era in his life was instrumental in shaping his approach to business, fostering a meticulousness in financial matters and a strategic vision that could pinpoint and exploit nascent opportunities with precision. By 19, he had launched into his first venture into entrepreneurship, investing in a coke production operation. This bold move signaled the onset of an expansive business empire, and Frick's unyielding determination and keen business insight would soon propel him from the modest beginnings of rural Pennsylvania to towering heights in the industrial landscape. Henry Clay Frick's entry into the coke and steel sectors was a pivotal move that not only surged his wealth, but also solidified his position in American industrial history. And his strategic ventures in these industries were characterized by shrewd decisions and alliances, propelling him to a leading role in the Industrial Revolution. You see, the inception of Frick's journey into the coke business in the 1870s showcased his ability to identify and capitalize on emerging market trends. Coke, a critical fuel derived from coal for steel production, was growing in demand as the steel industry began to boom. Consequently, starting with a modest investment in a small coke operation, Frick's keen market insight and entrepreneurial spirit led to the rapid expansion of his enterprise, H.C. Frick and Company. And his efforts soon positioned him as the country's leading coke producer. Now, a defining moment in Frick's career was his partnership with Andrew Carnegie during the 1880s. Carnegie, a major figure in the steel industry, recognized the importance of having a stable coke supply for his mills. This partnership between Carnegie's steel manufacturing capabilities and Frick's coke production expertise was a powerful combination, enabling them to dominate the steel and coke markets. And Frick's role evolved significantly when he became chairman of Carnegie Brothers and Company in 1889, further tightening the integration between coke production and steel manufacturing. Now, this collaboration with Carnegie was crucial for Frick's financial success. As the steel industry flourished, driven by the expansion of railroads and the urbanization of America, Frick's wealth skyrocketed. His dominance over the coke supply chain provided him with a strategic edge and a lucrative slice of the industry's profits. Frick's influence extended further, with his contribution to the creation of the United States Steel Corporation in 1901. This amalgamation of steel and iron firms, including Carnegie Steel, into the world's first billion-dollar corporation, signaled a new chapter in industrial history. By the dawn of the 20th century, Frick had become one of the nation's richest individuals. His ventures into coke and steel, coupled with his alliance with Carnegie, yielded substantial returns, enabling him to diversify into real estate and finance. However, Frick's legacy is not without its controversies. His vehement stance against labor unions and his pivotal role in the Homestead Strike of 1892 underscore a darker aspect of his legacy. This confrontation at the Homestead Steel Works, which Frick managed on behalf of Andrew Carnegie, became one of the most notorious labor disputes in American history. And the decision to bring in private security agents from the Pinkerton Detective Agency to break the strike led to a violent clash, resulting in numerous fatalities and a wave of national condemnation. The incident not only spotlighted the harsh realities of labor conditions during the era, but also the extreme measures industrial magnates would employ to quash unionization efforts and maintain control over their workforce. Despite the shadow cast by such events, the impact of Henry Clay Frick on the industrial landscape of America is undeniable. His strategies, though often criticized for their ruthlessness, played a pivotal role in establishing a vast industrial empire. His legacy, though complex and controversial, underscores the multifaceted nature of industrial expansion and its far-reaching effects on American society and economy. However, his impact on his own children and descendants would be even more direct, which is what we'll investigate in the next chapter. Henry Clay Frick, indeed, left a legacy that extends far beyond his business achievements. Upon his passing in 1919, the division of his substantial estate revealed a clear preference for his daughter, Helen Clay Frick, who inherited the majority of his wealth. This decision highlighted her distinctive role within the Frick family and paved the way for her future endeavors in philanthropy and the arts, in sharp contrast to her siblings, who received significantly less. Now, many say Helen's inheritance was a deliberate recognition of her shared interests with her father, particularly in the realm of art. Entrusted with a considerable portion of his fortune, including his esteemed art collection and his New York residence, later transformed into the renowned Frick Collection Museum. This bequest appears to be a clear indication of Frick's trust in Helen's ability to further his cultural and philanthropic aspirations. However, the financial discrepancy in the inheritance was notable. Helen's share amounted to approximately $38 million, equivalent to over $400 million in today's currency, positioning her among the wealthiest women in America during that period. On the other hand, Frick's son, Charles Frick, received a lesser portion of the estate. Though still a considerable amount, it paled in comparison to what Helen received. Yet, nevertheless, Childs established his own legacy as a noted vertebrate paleontologist, contributing extensively to the American Museum of Natural History. Yet the repercussions of Frick's decision have had a lasting effect on his lineage. Helen's inheritance not only allowed her to enhance the Frick legacy through her philanthropic and cultural contributions, but also set a precedent for the subsequent generations. And her efforts laid the groundwork for her nephew, Henry Clay Frick II, and other descendants to pursue diverse interests and careers. Notably, Henry Clay Frick II became a distinguished physician and professor instead of a ruthless businessman like his grandfather, serving as chairman of the Department of Medicine at New York Hospital, Cornell Medical Center. Thus, his career, though distinct from the industrial and artistic spheres of his grandfather and aunt, was facilitated by the financial stability afforded by the Frick fortune, showcasing the varied paths Frick's descendants have taken, each shaped by the inheritance and the legacy left behind. However, it is certainly clear that the multi-billionaire lifestyle that Frick himself lived would not be the path of his later descendants, due in part to his personal dispensations of wealth. In order to better understand how that played, and compare it to other old money families who kept and even increased their wealth, such as the Rockefellers and Mellons, let's jump to the next chapter. Now, Henry Clay Frick's approach to amassing and allocating his fortune was characterized by a pronounced emphasis on culture and philanthropy. His lavish expenditures, epitomized by his opulent New York City residence, now the esteemed Frick Collection Museum, and his vast art collection, underscored his profound appreciation for cultural and historical patrimony. And while these investments endowed his legacy with a rich cultural dimension, they did not enhance the financial inheritance bequeathed to his descendants in a direct manner. In a marked contrast, contemporaries such as the Rockefellers and Mellons opted for a diversified investment strategy, channeling their fortunes into ventures that assured enduring generational wealth. The Rockefellers, for example, significantly engaged in philanthropic endeavors through the establishment of perpetual entities like the Rockefeller Foundation. This strategy not only advanced public health initiatives, but also secured and augmented the family's wealth. Likewise, the Mellons' savvy investments across finance and industry sectors guaranteed a wealth expansion that benefited successive generations. The execution of Frick's estate further highlights the contrast in financial legacy management between his family and those of the Rockefellers or Mellons. Frick allocated a substantial portion of his estate to philanthropic causes, with the majority of his residual wealth inherited by his daughter, Helen Clay Frick. Though laudable, this philanthropic gesture did not facilitate wealth growth over time. Helen, inheriting a considerable fortune, prioritized arts and charity over investment strategies that could have furthered the family's financial base. And Frick's choice to bequeath the bulk of his estate to a singular heir, rather than distributing it among multiple descendants, concentrated the wealth but simultaneously curtailed its growth potential. Conversely, the Rockefellers and Mellons established trusts and foundations, mechanisms that not only safeguarded their wealth but enabled its financial proliferation across generations. Therefore, today, Henry Clay Frick's descendants, though comfortably affluent, do not figure among the echelons of modern billionaires. This status is the result of a series of factors deeply embedded in the family's ethos and historical decisions. And the Frick family's inclination towards privacy, coupled with an enduring commitment to philanthropy, has significantly influenced their financial standing and societal perception. Additionally, the Fricks have steered clear of venturing into large-scale business enterprises or adopting investment strategies aimed at significantly multiplying their wealth in today's economic climate. While they have managed their assets with competence, their approach has not been marked by the aggressive pursuit of capital growth, a strategy often employed by contemporary wealthy individuals and families to amass substantial fortunes. Imagine, if you will, stepping into a time machine, setting the coordinates for the heart of the Gilded Age, America's era of unprecedented industry and affluence that forged the most iconic old money families. And, amid the titans of the time, beyond the Rockefellers, Carnegies, Astors and Mellons, there looms a name that might surprise you: Gould. Indeed, Jay Gould, that infamous architect of fortunes whose audacious maneuvers in finance and railroads arguably gave us the phrase robber baron. But Gould's tale doesn't just end with that moniker. At the zenith of his power, he was a force so formidable that he came breathtakingly close to cornering the entire gold market, a feat so fantastical that it threatened to bring President Ulysses S. Grant to his knees. On today's episode, we become your tour guides into the opulent and infamous world of Jay Gould and his descendants. Through their eyes, you will witness the fierce battles for supremacy in business, the lavish lifestyles that only unimaginable wealth could afford, and the intricate strategies of power and influence that turned the wheels of the nation's progress, painting a vivid picture of an era where ambition knew no bounds and the quest for dominance was the ultimate game. Thus, their legacy, marked by extravagant multi-billion-dollar successes and spectacular falls from grace, offers a window into the tumultuous period that gave rise to America's wealthiest dynasties. As we describe the Goulds, the old money family that went from riches to rags and back again. Jay Gould, a titan of American railroads and a wizard of finance, stitched his name into the fabric of the late 19th century with a fortune so vast it's hard to wrap your head around it. Picture $71.2 billion in today's dollars, enough to make Midas blush. Therefore, Gould wasn't just rich. He was a cornerstone of America's transportation revolution, playing the market with the finesse of a seasoned gambler. And his empire wasn't confined to ledgers and stock certificates. Gould's penchant for splendor was nowhere more evident than in his choice of digs, with Lyndhurst Mansion being the jewel in his crown. Perched by the Hudson in Tarrytown, New York, this Gothic revival masterpiece, enveloped in its own 67-acre wonderland, was more than a home. It was a statement. Acquired in 1880, Lyndhurst was a canvas for Gould's grandeur, boasting turrets and designs that broke the mold of conventional architecture. Thus, his tenure at Lyndhurst, though marred by tuberculosis, was a time of opulence and refinement, evidenced by the treasures within Herter Brothers furniture, Tiffany windows, and paintings straight out of the Knoedler Gallery. After Gould's departure in 1892, Lyndhurst's legacy continued through his daughters, Helen and Anna, who infused it with their personal touches, modernizing and memorializing the estate. Now, a national historic landmark, Lyndhurst stands as a preserved slice of history, inviting us into the world of one of America's most intriguing magnates. But Gould's reach extended beyond the realms of real estate and railroads. His dominion over Western Union gave him the keys to the kingdom of information, allowing him to manipulate news flow and silence critics. Indeed, Gould's dance with politics was a delicate one, involving backroom dealings and, reportedly, the greasing of presidential palms. And Jay Gould's belief in the United States' economic future not only shaped his business maneuvers, but also etched a path for his descendants, weaving their way into the tapestry of global power and prestige. The marriages of his family members, notably Anna Gould's ties with European nobility through her marriages to Bonny de Castellane and then to Haley de Talleyrand-Périgord, Duke of Saigon, mirrored the Gould family's societal elevation and their unbroken strand of influence. Not to be overshadowed, Helen Vivian Gould's union with John Graham Hope Delapour Horsley Beresford, a scion of British nobility, underscored the family's entrenched status among the world's elite, bridging continents and cultures. These days, the torch of the Gould legacy has been carried forward by their business ventures, particularly through Kingdon Gould III. A beacon of the family's legacy, Kingdon's forays into Washington, D.C. real estate, including the legendarily opulent Mayflower Hotel, highlight the Goulds' unyielding influence on the economic stage. However, needless to say, this family isn't exactly the household name that the Rockefellers or Mellons have continued to be. With that in mind, what exactly happened to this once $70 billion behemoth of a family that led them to fade into obscurity? To answer that, We'll have to turn over the proverbial page to the next chapter. The man who would come to be known in history as much for his infamy as his fame was born, Jason Gould, born on the 7th of May 1836 in Roxbury, New York. And regardless of his later controversial exploits, without a doubt the life of Jay Gould represents the classic rags to riches American ethos, as his journey began in a setting far removed from the bustling centers of finance and industry in a family of modest farmers in western New York. Now, John Burr Gould, Jay's father, balanced his life between farming and milling, participating actively in community development. And notably, he was the first male child of European descent born in Roxbury, remembered for his contributions to local education. Mary Moore, Jay's mother, brought to the family a heritage of Scottish settlers known for their strong religious convictions and perseverance. For this, Jay inherited from her a blend of religious fervour and a softer side that would occasionally manifest in his later business dealings. Despite their humble circumstances, Jay Gould's early life was supported by his parents' commitment to his education and development. This support enabled him to attend local schools and further his studies at Beechwood and Hobart seminaries, where he was exposed to classical languages. Undoubtedly, this educational background was somewhat exceptional for a farmer's son, suggesting his parents recognized and nurtured his potential beyond their agricultural setting. Growing up in Roxbury, Gould's early years revealed a sharp intellect and a natural inclination towards commerce, setting him apart from his peers. And the political and social upheavals of the time, particularly his father's involvement in the anti-rent movement, challenging the remnants of feudal land practices in New York, likely had a significant influence on Gould, fostering a sense of determination and the importance of securing one's interests. Then, the trajectory of Gould's career took a decisive turn with his initial foray into the business realm, starting in a blacksmith shop. And his business acumen quickly shone through, leading to an offer of partnership, which he later parlayed into a sale to his father. This early venture into commerce provided Gould with invaluable insights into the mechanics of business, laying the groundwork for his later exploits. Yet, perhaps most telling of Gould's early professional endeavors was his mastery of surveying, which he adeptly turned into a lucrative vocation. His surveying work across New York's southern counties, culminating in the publication of a history book at the age of 19, not only highlighted his expertise, but also his knack for leveraging his talents to full advantage. The young entrepreneur's skills in surveying came to the forefront when he taught himself the trade and turned it into a profession. As Gould's entrepreneurial spirit flourished, he ventured into the tanning industry in the 1850s. With the savings he had accumulated, Gould opened a tannery in Pennsylvania, aligning himself with Zadok Pratt, a veteran in the field with the experience of running the world's largest tannery at one time. And though their collaboration was brief, it proved to be a critical learning curve for Gould, enriching his business management acumen. The dissolution of this partnership led Gould to New York City, the pulsating heart of America's financial universe, where he dived into stock market speculation. His subsequent foray into Wall Street was in partnership with Charles Loop, a seasoned leather merchant. This venture, however, met a grim fate in the Panic of 1857, leaving Loop ruined and Gould's reputation tarnished. Yet, undaunted by these early challenges, Gould's resolve only strengthened. Convinced of the fortunes waiting to be made in New York City, he remained unshaken in his pursuit of success, as he would soon find his calling in a burgeoning industry of the time, the railroads. Jay Gould's foray into the railroad sector marked the beginning of what would evolve into a monumental chapter in his pursuit of wealth and influence. Starting in 1859, Gould dipped his toes into the waters of railroad stocks, laying the groundwork for a venture that would eventually crown him a titan of the industry. And his engagement in the railroad realm took on a more pronounced form during the tumultuous years of the American Civil War, a period ripe with economic disarray, yet brimming with opportunities for those shrewd and tenacious enough to seize them. By 1863, Gould had etched his name as a noteworthy figure in the business world through his management of the Rensselaer and Saratoga Railway. His adept handling of this venture paved the way for his acquisition and reformation of the Rutland and Washington Railway, further cementing his stature within the industry. Subsequently, Gould's ascendancy continued unabated, and by 1867 he had secured a director's seat at the Erie Railroad, setting the stage for one of his most audacious and notorious exploits. But Gould's tenure with the Erie Railroad was marked by brazen financial stratagems that would etch his name into the annals of American business law. The Erie Railroad War, a vehement struggle for dominion over the Erie Railroad, cast Gould into the spotlight as a formidable adversary. Alongside James Fisk, Gould engaged in a series of cunning maneuvers to thwart Cornelius Vanderbilt, deploying fraudulent stock issuances and manipulating legal and political avenues to diminish Vanderbilt's influence over the railroad. Indeed, this skirmish not only cemented Gould's repute as a financial sorcerer, but also highlighted his readiness to employ any means necessary to safeguard his ventures. Yet, it was Gould's venture into the gold market that truly exemplified his boldness and strategic finesse. The infamous Black Friday of 1869 saw Gould and Fisk concoct a plan to monopolize the gold market, driving up prices through accumulation and disinformation, all while betting against the likelihood of government intervention. Gould's audacity reached new heights as he sought insider knowledge from President Ulysses S. Grant's circle, aiming to stay one step ahead of federal actions. Despite their initial success, with gold prices skyrocketing, the government's decisive sale of significant gold reserves under Grant's directive caused the market to plummet, leading to widespread financial devastation. Gould, through cautious hedging, managed to sidestep personal catastrophe, but the debacle left an enduring stain on his legacy, showcasing the volatile nature of unbridled financial speculation. Thus, Gould's business endeavors, marked by a blend of brilliance and moral ambiguity, reveal a pattern of ambitious acquisitions and financial gambits. Through the Erie Railroad War, he demonstrated a relentless drive to manipulate systems to his benefit, a precursor to the bold tactics he would later employ. His attempt to corner the gold market underscored his penchant for risk and innovation, setting him apart from his peers. However, these ventures also painted Gould as a figure whose relentless quest for dominance often skirted the boundaries of ethics, leaving a complex legacy that intertwines ingenuity with controversy. Now, Jay Gould's ascendancy to the zenith of financial success culminated in an amassed fortune, estimated at a staggering $77 million, an amount that, in contemporary terms, translates to many billions, as mentioned in the beginning of this video. His financial dominion extended across various pivotal sectors of the American economy, most notably railroads, telegraphy, and even the media, with significant stakes in the Union Pacific Railroad, Western Union Telegraph Company, and ownership of the New York World newspaper. Yet, despite Gould's undeniable prowess in wealth accumulation and his substantial contributions to the American economic landscape, especially in the realms of railroad expansion and modernization, his name became synonymous with the pejorative moniker robber baron. This label, emblematic of the era's most ruthless capitalists, clung to Gould and his peers, who were perceived as exploiting labor, manipulating markets, and engaging in bribery to amass vast fortunes, often at the public's expense. However, no matter what our opinions of his tactics are, it is clear that Jay Gould emerged a very rich man, ready to pass a hefty legacy on to his children. In the next chapter, we'll find out whether they were able to keep the fortune growing, like the Rockefeller and Mellon descendants did, or if they would falter. George J. Gould's entrance into the world on the 6th of February, 1864, in New York City, marked the assumed continuation of a legacy shaped by his father, Jay Gould. However, unlike the meticulously planned successions of today's old money scions, there was little indication that Jay Gould deliberately prepared George to inherit the empire. Yet, we're on solid footing to assume the environment George grew up in naturally inclined him towards the path tread by his father. Inheriting the reins in 1892, George took over a sprawling network that included the Missouri Pacific and Texas and Pacific railroads, among others. But George's tenure was marked by ambitious but ultimately unfulfilled visions, such as the creation of a transcontinental railroad system. This dream, grand in scope, was marred by a lack of concrete financial and operational planning, and his approach to expansion was fraught with strategic missteps, notably an aggressive push for growth without the necessary capital, which overstretched the empire's resources and hampered its competitiveness. Under George's watch, the Gould railroads grappled with outdated infrastructure and inefficiencies, lagging behind rivals that prioritized modernization and operational excellence. And his failure to adapt to the fast-evolving landscape of the American railroad industry, particularly evident in his handling of economic downturns like the Panic of 1907, further destabilized the empire. Therefore, unlike his father, whose knack for market manipulation and strategic acumen was legendary, George's decisions often reflected a lack of the same depth of insight, leaving the empire vulnerable to financial turmoil. Furthermore, George's laissez-faire management style contributed significantly to the decline of the Gould Empire. This approach led to strategic drift and operational neglect, allowing problems like corruption and maintenance issues to flourish unchecked, a stark departure from Jay Gould's tightly controlled empire. The resulting deterioration in service quality and customer trust further diminished the competitiveness of the Gould railroads. In other words, the cumulative effect of these strategic blunders was the loss of control over the family's railroad holdings, and the financial disarray brought on by George's leadership forced the Goulds to cede several key railroads, marking a dramatic fall from prominence in the American railroad industry. However, while George was bungling up the family fortune, the women of the Gould family were using a bit more tactful approach to the old money game through strategic marriages and working their way into the aristocracy. Anna Gould, born into the opulence and controversy surrounding her father, Jay Gould captured the public's imagination not solely through her inheritance, but also via her marriages to European aristocracy. In 1895, she entered into matrimony with Bonny de Castellane, a French nobleman emblematic of old-world title holders who sought to fortify their waning fortunes through alliances with New World wealth. Indeed, this marriage represented a quintessential Gilded Age transaction, merging the financial might of America's new money with the storied pedigrees of European nobility. And the union of Anna and Bonny was marked by opulence and public fascination, with their Parisian residence, the Palais Rose, standing as a testament to their extravagant lifestyle. However, the marriage deteriorated due to Bonny's prodigal spending habits and unfaithfulness, culminating in their divorce in 1906. Anna's subsequent marriage to another aristocrat, Élie de Talleyrand-Périgord, Duke of Sagan, in 1908, marked her second alliance with European nobility, further elevating her social stature despite initial familial reservations given Élie's relation to Bonny and his less illustrious paternity. Unlike her first marriage, Anna's union with Haley proved to be more harmonious and enduring. Next, Marjorie Gould, a niece of Anna, also navigated the marriage market to bolster the Gould family's societal position through her union with Anthony Joseph Drexel III in 1910. This alliance with the Drexel banking dynasty underscored the strategic matrimonial choices that fortified the Goulds' social standing in both American and European circles. And Helen Gould, another distinguished member of the Gould lineage, furthered the family's entrenchment in nobility through her marriage to John Graham Hope de la Poer Horsley Beresford, the 5th Baron Decies, in 1911. To provide a bit more context, these matrimonial strategies were emblematic of a broader phenomenon during the Gilded Age, where marriages between American heiresses and European nobles were orchestrated not just for love, but for the mutual benefits they offered: financial stability for the aristocracy and an entree into the elite social echelon for America's nouveau riche. The Gould family's forays into such unions thus mirrored the ambitions and societal aspirations of America's wealthiest clans, seeking to cement their legacy and prestige through connections that spanned the Atlantic, blending the rugged individualism of American enterprise with the ancient traditions of European aristocracy. In some ways, we could say these marriages also saved the Gould legacy, for from them birthed later generations of influential, if somewhat poorer, descendants in many fields across the world. The modern Gould family, with its roots deeply entrenched in the industrial and financial bedrock of American history, branched into various spheres of influence and achievement, from the cutthroat arenas of business established by Jay Gould to the refined realms of sport and public service navigated by his descendants. For example, Kingdon Gould Sr. and Jay Gould. The second exemplify the evolution of this dynastic tale, embodying the transition from the aggressive pursuit of wealth to the cultivation of genteel interests and public stewardship. Kingdon Gould Sr., born into privilege in 1887 in Manhattan, emerged as a figure who seamlessly blended the financial legacy of his lineage with a passion for the social and sporting life that defined American high society in the early 20th century. A product of the prestigious Columbia University, his education in engineering paved the way for his stewardship of the family's railroad interests and his valorous service during World War I. And beyond his professional endeavors, Kingdon Sr. was renowned for his prowess in polo, a sport that symbolized the leisure and competitive spirit of the elite. Furthermore, his marriage to Annunziata Camilla Maria Lucci broadened the familial and social connections of the Goulds, ensuring the legacy's continuation through their children, among them Kingdon Gould Jr., who we'll cover in a second. And Jay Gould II, Kingdon Sr.'s sibling, charted a path in another historically elite sport. His acclaim was garnered not in the boardrooms of industry, but on the court tennis fields, where his extraordinary skill earned him a championship reign that spanned over 2.5 decades, and even an Olympic gold medal. His triumphs in court tennis, starting from a precocious national title win at 17, attested to a dedication that paralleled the industrious spirit of his grandfather, albeit within the confines of sport rather than finance. Yet, the achievements of Jay Gould II in the sporting domain did not insulate him from personal trials, as his life was prematurely curtailed by illness, a poignant reminder of the vulnerabilities that lie beneath the surface of public success. The continuum of the Gould legacy was furthered by Kingdon Gould Jr., who transitioned from the familial heritage of financial and sporting accomplishment to a career defined by political and diplomatic service. His roles as ambassador to Luxembourg and the Netherlands were not merely diplomatic postings, but represented the Gould family's enduring influence within the tapestry of American public life. Kingdon Jr.'s diplomatic tenure, especially during the tumultuous period of Nixon's resignation, highlighted the adaptability that have characterized the Goulds across generations. The legacy persisted through Kingdon Gould III, who carved out a significant niche within the real estate development sector, particularly in the bustling environs of Washington, D.C. As a key figure in the Gould Property Company, founded by his father, Kingdon III steered the firm to prominence in the D.C. metropolitan landscape. His stewardship was marked by his role in spearheading projects like the Hyatt Regency Crystal City Hotel and the iconic Mayflower Hotel, both of which have left a lasting impact on the city's architectural and commercial development. Kingdon III's entrepreneurial vision was further manifested in the partnership with Boston Properties, culminating in the development of Market Square North. This project, completed in 1997, not only enhanced the Pennsylvania Avenue National Historic Site, but also exemplified his ability to blend historical preservation with modern development. Additionally, his strategic foresight in executing a land swap deal with the District of Columbia paved the way for the construction of the Washington Marriott Marquise. This hotel, serving as a central hub for the Walter E. Washington Convention Center, underscored Kingdon III's influential role in shaping the real estate and hospitality sectors in Washington, D.C., thus continuing the Gould legacy of impactful contributions across generations. Thus, the Gould family legacy, spanning from Jay Gould's notorious rise as a Gilded Age tycoon to his descendants' diverse pursuits in sports, diplomacy, real estate, and even European aristocracy, embodies the complexity of American success. While Jay's ruthless business tactics earned him wealth and infamy, his descendants diversified this legacy through contributions to sportsmanship, public service, and urban development, blending ambition with societal engagement, but also navigating the controversies inherited from their forebears' tumultuous career. One step into the city of Beverly Hills, where the essence of luxury is not just lived, but breathed, is often said to cast a spell of opulence that blankets the land. Indeed, this sanctuary of Southern California wealth, with its air perfumed by affluence, invites you into a world where every corner tells a story of grandeur. Here, amid the lush boulevards, stand guardians of history, majestic stone edifices that whisper tales of a bygone era's extravagance. However, one monument, in particular, beckons with a presence that transcends its physical bounds, serving as a gateway to the saga of an old money family whose vision carved the destiny of Beverly Hills from the dreams of giants. This is your entrance into the legacy of the Doheny family, an emblem of early American prosperity that shaped this enclave into a citadel of luxury. Coming from humble origins to a level of wealth matched only by the name Rockefeller, their foresight transformed the Californian landscape, melding their dreams with the earth to craft an oasis of elegance. In today's episode, we invite you on a voyage through their opulent rags-to-riches tale, exploring how dreams etched in stone can define the heart of a city as we describe. The old money family that built Beverly Hills, the Doheny dynasty. The 1920s roared for the Doheny family, with Edward L. Doheny's pockets bulging from striking black gold in Los Angeles back in 1892. By this jazz-infused decade, he wasn't just rolling in dough, he was out-rolling the likes of John D. Rockefeller. Picture it, Doheny, a titan of the oil scene, sitting atop a mountain of cash with a net worth breezing past $100 million by 1925, and that's a cool $1.67 billion today, in case you're wondering. And Doheny wasn't just a lucky prospector. Alongside his sidekick, Charles A. Canfield, he hit the oil jackpot in Mexico, turning them into the world's oil kings. By 1902, Doheny's Huasteca Petroleum Company was sprawling over 448,000 acres in Mexico, pumping out 85% of the country's oil, making him the biggest independent oil producer on the planet. But let's not sugarcoat it. While Doheny's wallet got fatter, the benefits for Mexico's people and government were, well, less than a trickle. Then there's the pièce de résistance of Doheny's empire, the Greystone Mansion. Constructed in 1928 for a whopping $3.1 million, equal to around $53 million in today's money, this Tudor revival masterpiece was a gift to his son, Edward Ned Doheny Jr. Designed by the star architect Gordon B. Kaufman, this 55-room, 46,000-square-foot behemoth sat on 16 lush acres, claiming the title of California's priciest home at the time. Thus, if walls could talk, Greystone's environs would probably just chuckle and say, "Expensive? Darling, I'm priceless." But Greystone was just the jewel in the crown of the Doheny real estate empire. The family also owned a French Gothic chateau in the exclusive Chester Place, transforming Doheny Sr. into the unofficial king of this gated community. If you're picturing Monopoly, you're not far off, except in this game, Doheny was playing with real houses and real money. So, while the 20s were roaring for many, they were practically singing for the Dohenys, with Edward L. leading the chorus from his oil-drenched throne, overshadowing even the mightiest of moguls. But the Doheny family wasn't just about opulent mansions and oil gushers. They had a knack for turning everything they touched into a display of grandeur, including the great outdoors and the automobile industry. They transformed Chester Place into a sprawling private park and generously gifted a chunk of their coastal paradise in Dana Point to the state of California, creating what's now known as Doheny State Beach. And their philanthropy didn't stop at the beach. They were also instrumental in the growth of academia in Los Angeles, doling out parcels of land for campuses like Mount St. Mary's College and erecting buildings at Loyola Marymount University. Clearly, when the Dohenys went into philanthropy mode, they went big. But oh, the cars. The Dohenys took luxury to the streets with a fleet of custom-built automobiles that turned heads and set the standard for high-class travel. Edward and Ned Doheny weren't just car owners. They were connoisseurs of bespoke automotive artistry, commissioning creations from the Earl Automobile Works that were as much about status as they were about getting from point A to point B. These were showstoppers, each a masterpiece of design and luxury that showcased the Dohenys' place atop the social and industrial ladder. Plus, art and culture weren't left behind in the Doheny dash for distinction. The family's residences, particularly the storied Greystone mansion, doubled as sanctuaries for a lavish collection of art and rare books. Their homes were more than mere living spaces. They were temples of taste, brimming with fine art and exquisite furnishings that could rival any museum. And in true Doheny style, their art wasn't just for private enjoyment, it was shared with the world in exhibitions, adding a dash of their opulent lifestyle to the cultural tapestry of Los Angeles and beyond. In every sense, the Dohenys didn't just live in the era, they were architects of it, crafting a legacy that was as much about the splendor they surrounded themselves with as it was about the unforgettable mark they left on Californian society and industry. However, this old money saga isn't one that starts with little Edward holding a silver spoon, enjoying his opulent wealth from a young age. In fact, the Doheny journey is one out of the classic rags to riches style in American history, which is what we'll investigate in the next chapter. At the close of the 19th century, the ascent of Edward L. Doheny encapsulates the quintessence of the American dream, set against the backdrop of an Irish immigrant family's endeavor for a better life. Born into the Doheny family in 1856 in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, Edward's narrative was not isolated but part of a larger wave of Irish emigration. Fleeing famine, political upheaval, and economic despair, Edward's parents represented a microcosm of the Irish diaspora, driven by the hope of forging a prosperous existence in the United States. Thus, Edward's early years were deeply influenced by the resilience and aspirations of his forebears. Despite the family's humble beginnings, Edward exhibited a tenacious spirit and ambition from an early age, and by 16 he ventured out, working as a mule driver for the US government's geological survey teams, marking his first foray into the realm of prospecting. However, this endeavor quickly revealed its limitations in terms of financial gain, propelling Edward towards the pursuit of precious metals in the West's rugged terrains. His quest for fortune led him across the American frontier, from the Black Hills of South Dakota to various other locales known for their mineral wealth. Yet, these early attempts at mining were met with limited success. The 1880 census records, identifying him as a painter in Prescott, Arizona, underscore a period of financial instability and a deviation from his initial aspirations. But these years, characterized by a diverse range of jobs and challenges, unknowingly laid the groundwork for Doheny's eventual triumph in the oil industry. Then, his venture into Los Angeles would mark the inception of a remarkable chapter in the development of the American oil industry. His arrival in the city in 1890, with initial aspirations within the legal field, quickly took a dramatic turn, and destiny had a unique path charted for him. In 1892, Doheny's attention was captured by a wagon laden with oil-soaked soil while ambling through Los Angeles. This peculiar sight propelled him to engage with the driver, who introduced him to brea, a term for tar, igniting Doheny's curiosity and setting the stage for his future endeavors. With the foundation of his oil empire commencing, Doheny, alongside his mining partner Charles A. Canfield, embarked on an ambitious journey by drilling the first successful oil well in Los Angeles. Nestled near what is today known as Dodger Stadium in Echo Park, this venture not only struck oil, but also ignited the Los Angeles oil boom, redefining the industry's landscape. The well's success underscored Doheny's transformation into a vanguard of the California oil realm, stemming from his acute observation and innovative approach. He capitalized on the visible oil seeps in the area, deducing the existence of bountiful underground oil reserves. Soon, the repercussions of Doheny's discovery reverberated beyond his immediate circle, engendering a profound transformation across Los Angeles and its adjacent regions. The oil well beckoned a wave of prospectors and investors, catalyzing the oil industry's expansion and bolstering Los Angeles's evolution into a pivotal urban center. But soon, Doheny and his team wouldn't simply limit their influence to Southern California, or even solely to the United States. Doheny was going global, as we'll see in the next chapter. Edward L. Doheny's ventures stretched well beyond the confines of California and significantly marked the early 20th century's industrial landscape. His foresight led him to Tampico, Mexico in 1901, where he established the nation's inaugural oil well. And this venture wasn't merely an act of pioneering spirit, but a strategic maneuver that positioned Doheny at the forefront of the oil industry amidst the Mexican Revolution. Under his guidance, the Mexican Petroleum Company emerged as Mexico's leading oil producer. Notably, in 1916, his Cerro Azul No. 4 well distinguished itself as the preeminent oil-producing well globally, boasting a production rate of 260,000 barrels a day. And Doheny's influence in the oil sector extended to South America, where his ventures in Venezuela and Colombia saw the Pan American Petroleum and Transport Company ascend to one of the globe's foremost oil entities in the 1920s. His knack for strategic investments, particularly in essential infrastructure like pipelines and storage facilities, played a pivotal role in the efficient distribution of crude oil from these territories. However, Edward Doheny's reign was not without its controversies. For example, his involvement in the Teapot Dome scandal stands as one of the early 20th century's most notable episodes of corporate and political misconduct. In 1922, a controversial decision was made by Albert B. Fall, the U.S. Secretary of the Interior, to lease significant oil reserves at Elk Hills, California, to Doheny's Pan American Petroleum and Transport Company, and the Teapot Dome field in Wyoming to the Sinclair Consolidated Oil Corporation. These reserves were crucial assets of the U.S. Navy, and the leases were arranged without the transparency of competitive bidding, a decision that would soon ignite a scandal of national proportions. The core of the controversy centered around a $100,000 payment made by Doheny to Secretary Fall in 1921, purportedly as a gift, but widely regarded as a bribe to secure the lease on the Elk Hills Naval Petroleum Reserve. This act of bribery, although Doheny was ultimately acquitted in 1930, significantly marred his reputation. Then, the scandal expanded as it was revealed that Fall had accepted similar bribes for the leasing of the Teapot Dome oil field, leading to his conviction. In the aftermath, Doheny divested a majority of his holdings in Pan American Petroleum and Transport to Standard Oil of Indiana in April 1925, while consolidating his California assets into the newly formed Pan American Western Petroleum Company. This strategic maneuver allowed Doheny to refocus on the core aspects of oil exploration and production, distancing himself from the scandal. But the legal entanglements and public scrutiny intensified when Doheny and Fall faced the prospect of a second trial for bribery in 1929. Subsequently, in a tragic turn of events, Doheny's son Ned and his assistant, Hugh Plunkett, both implicated in the scandal, died in a murder, plus Ned taking his own life, under circumstances that remain speculative and contentious. Raymond Chandler, who briefly intersected with the oil industry during this turbulent period, later wove elements of these events into his literary work, reflecting on the lasting impact of the scandal. In the years following, Edward Doheny retreated from the public eye, overwhelmed by legal battles and personal loss. Indeed, the shareholder lawsuits that ensued in the wake of the Teapot Dome scandal, coupled with the death of his son, led to his withdrawal into a life marked by solitude and declining health. But Doheny's legacy, while significant in the development of the American oil industry, remains intricately tied to one of the most infamous scandals in U.S. history, serving as a cautionary tale of the risks inherent in the unchecked pursuit of power and wealth. On the flip side, his descendants would pave a much more upbeat path for the west side of Los Angeles in the coming years. In the latter part of the 19th century, Edward L. Doheny took a significant step into family life with his marriage to Carrie Luella Wilkins in 1883. Specifically, their union took root during Doheny's aforementioned initial forays into prospecting and mining in the challenging landscapes of the New Mexico Territory. The couple settled in Kingston, a modest and rugged silver mining town where Doheny sought to carve out a fortune in mining before shifting his focus to the burgeoning oil industry. The birth of their daughter, Eileen, in December 1885, marked the onset of Doheny's familial responsibilities. Nonetheless, these initial years were characterized by economic challenges as Doheny endeavored to provide for his family, at times engaging in various occupations, including painting. Following the unfortunate demise of his first wife, Doheny entered a second marriage in 1900 with Carrie Estelle Betzold, a telephone operator he encountered in Los Angeles. By this time, Doheny had already laid the foundations of his wealth in the oil sector. Estelle, born in Philadelphia in 1875, and having moved to Los Angeles at 15 with her German immigrant parents, underwent a remarkable transformation from a telephone operator to a prominent philanthropist and an avid book collector through her marriage to Doheny. This transition underscored the profound influence of Doheny's achievements on his family's fortunes. In stark contrast to the hardships endured with his first wife, his life with Estelle was characterized by affluence and societal influence. Estelle leveraged her position for philanthropy, significantly impacting the community, notably through her support for the Catholic Church and her role in founding the Doheny Eye Institute after suffering partial blindness, reflecting the Doheny family's extensive social influence. But of course, the narrative of the Doheny legacy extends to Edward L. Doheny's descendants, notably through Lucy Doheny Batson, who later became Lucy Doheny Batson Niven, and her lineage, which includes Larry Niven. Larry Niven, a luminary in science fiction literature and a recipient of the Hugo Award 5 times, exemplifies the broad spectrum of talents and contributions the Doheny family has made beyond industrial and philanthropic endeavors. Therefore, while Lucy's direct connection to her father's legacy may not have been as publicly prominent as that of her brother Ned, her descendants have made significant cultural contributions, particularly in literature and entertainment, underscoring the Doheny family's diverse legacy. And Ned Doheny and Lucy Smith's offspring perpetuated the family's legacy across diverse spheres, notably through their philanthropic and cultural engagements. The Estelle Doheny Eye Foundation, a homage to Edward L. Doheny's second spouse, embodies the family's dedication to advancing medical research, with its endowment surpassing the $100 million mark. And Patrick A. Doheny, a descendant of Ned, has played a pivotal role in enriching Los Angeles's cultural scene, notably through his support for the LA County Museum of Art. Furthermore, despite their profound impact, the Doheny family has favored discretion over public acclaim. Yet, their sustained support for esteemed institutions, including the Huntington Library, eloquently speaks to their unwavering commitment to fostering cultural and scientific advancement. However, for most Angelenos and Beverly Hills residents, the most iconic piece of the Doheny legacy lives on in a stone edifice that we all know and cherish, which we'll discuss next. In the heart of Beverly Hills, California, Greystone Mansion emerges as a remarkable showcase of early 20th century opulence and architectural brilliance. This Tudor revival marvel, completed in 1928, was the brainchild of noted architect Gordon B. Kaufman. It was conceived as a grand gift from Edward L. Doheny to his son Ned and his family, embodying the zenith of luxury and ambition of its era. Constructed with an investment exceeding $3 million, a figure unheard of at the time, the mansion set a new standard for residential grandeur in California. And since the city of Beverly Hills acquired it in 1965, turning it into a public park 6 years later, Greystone Mansion has woven itself into the fabric of the community's cultural and social life. It has graced the silver screen and television, serving as a picturesque setting for numerous productions and thereby cementing its place in Hollywood lore. Furthermore, The mansion's elegance and historical significance make it a prime venue for weddings, sophisticated gatherings, and cultural events such as the annual Music in the Mansion series, which celebrates classical music, enhancing the cultural offerings available to the community. Thus, Greystone Mansion today is more than a landmark. It is a vibrant testament to the community's dedication to preserving its rich cultural heritage. And beyond their immediate estate, the Doheny family has significantly shaped the broader Beverly Hills and Los Angeles community. Edward L. Doheny's charitable activities, especially through the Carrie Estelle Doheny Foundation established by his widow, have been instrumental in enhancing the welfare, health, and education within Los Angeles. This foundation, together with the family's other philanthropic efforts, has contributed profoundly to the cultural and social fabric of the city. Furthermore, the Doheny name has become a permanent fixture in the landscape and history of Beverly Hills and its surroundings. Doheny Drive, serving as a daily testament to the family's lasting presence and contributions to urban development, runs through the heart of the city. Additionally, the Doheny family's ventures into real estate, notably the creation of the prestigious Trousdale Estates on what was once part of the Doheny Ranch, have profoundly influenced the architectural and community development of the area. And therefore, the Doheny family's story has all of the trappings of a classic American old money tale: rags to riches, triumph, tragedy, scandal, and philanthropic endeavors. In the Gilded Age of Boston's elite, where power and legacy were the ultimate currency, the Cabot dynasty once stood as the unchallenged kings and queens of unparalleled wealth, political might, and social sovereignty. Their influence was vast, their authority unquestioned, their affluence a dazzling beacon of old money grandeur that ruled the city's upper echelons with an iron fist. Yet, against the opulent backdrop of this formidable dynasty's reign, a figure lurked in the shadows, fueled by a mix of admiration and burning jealousy: Joseph P. Kennedy, Sr. You see, Joe Kennedy, a man of considerable ambition and cunning, was captivated by the Cabots' untouchable status, their every move dictating the social and political tides of Boston. It was indeed a world he desperately craved to conquer, not just for himself, but as a legacy to bequeath to his offspring. Thus, driven by a relentless envy and a visionary's foresight, Kennedy embarked on a relentless quest to dismantle the Cabot stronghold. He saw in his sons not just heirs to his name, but chess pieces in a grand strategy to usurp the Cabot's throne. With each calculated move, the Kennedys began their ascent, challenging the Cabots where they were strongest, on the political battlefield. Joseph P. Kennedy Sr., with a blend of charm and ruthlessness, groomed his sons for greatness, instilling in them the ambition to eclipse the Cabots' once unassailable position. In today's episode of Old Money Luxury, we share with you a 20-year campaign waged in the public eye and behind closed doors, where alliances were forged and loyalties tested as the Kennedy sons rose to prominence. And the Cabot dynasty's grip on Boston's elite slowly diminished, as we describe the old money family the Kennedys destroyed, the Cabot family dynasty. Swirling through Boston's history like a crisp New England breeze, the Cabot family planted their roots deep in the city's social and economic grounds since the turn of the 20th century. Dubbed as Boston Brahmins, the Cabots wove themselves into the very fabric of the city, blending a distinctive cocktail of finance, education, and philanthropy with a twist of Harvard University, Anglicanism, and the refined tastes of British American traditions. And in finance, the Cabots weren't just players, they were maestros. From their early days in the opium trade and privateering adventures, they laid the financial foundation that would steer Boston's economic ship for centuries. Thus, by the Roaring Twenties, they had their fingers in pies like the Beverly Cotton Manufactory and the Boston Manufacturing Company, not to mention the Cabot Corporation, painting them as pivotal figures in Boston's burgeoning industrial scene. But the Cabots' legacy didn't stop with dollars and cents. Their philanthropic pulse beat strongly through the veins of Boston's educational institutions. With hefty donations to Harvard, MIT, and the Massachusetts General Hospital, their generosity fed the minds and bodies of Bostonians. And the Cabot Family Charitable Trust and the Cabot Corporation Foundation sprinkled financial fairy dust across the arts, education, and health services, nurturing Boston's cultural and social landscape. Furthermore, owning landmarks and estates that dotted Boston's skyline, they etched their mark on the city's architectural history. For example, the Lewis Cabot estate, although now a whisper of the past, once stood an icon of Jacobean architecture with a landscape kissed by Frederick Law Olmsted's genius. And their real estate venture, Cabot, Cabot & Forbes, sculpted the city's face with iconic landmarks, weaving the Cabot name into Boston's urban facade. Still, the Cabot saga continued with ventures that stretched beyond the confines of real estate. Their inception of Cabot Corporation, under the watchful eyes of Godfrey and Samuel Cabot, marked a leap into carbon black production, fueling the automotive and printing industry's ascent. And their influence didn't wane as the curtains rose on the 1940s. The Cabot legacy, particularly through Henry Cabot Lodge Jr., wove its way through the fabric of American politics. You see, Lodge Jr., a scion of this storied family and the future political rival of none other than John F. Kennedy, took the Senate floor, upholding a tradition of public service that was synonymous with the Cabots and Lodges. Indeed, his tenure wasn't just a political appointment. It was a chapter in the family's storied history, embodying their long-standing influence and connections within the echelons of American politics. Furthermore, his journey, again like his future rival JFK, traversed the battlefields of World War II, before eventually ending in the diplomatic corridors of the United Nations, Vietnam, and the Vatican. However, before the Cabots could become a household name in one of America's oldest cities, Boston, they had to immigrate to what would become the United States, which is where we'll pick up in the next chapter. The story of the Cabots begins on the Channel Islands soil, particularly on the Isle of Jersey, where we find a story rich in history and soaked in the salty air of the sea. You see, this picturesque locale, straddling the waters between England and France, is well known to us Brits, but may not be so aware to modern Americans. Now, with a name that whispers of Norman ancestry, hinting at a lineage stretching back to the days following the Norman conquest of 1066, Cabot resonates with echoes of maritime adventures. Derived from Chabot, or carbo, Norman dialect for bullhead, a fish, the family's name intertwines with the sea-sprayed environment of their homeland, hinting at their future seafaring exploits. So, John Cabot, born into this family in 1680 on the Isle of Jersey, embodied the spirit of adventure. Soon, in 1700, he set sail not just across the ocean but into the future, landing in Salem, Massachusetts. This move was not merely a change of scenery, but a plunge into the vast possibilities of the New World, and it marked the start of the American chapter of the Cabot story, woven into the broader fabric of early American growth. See, the 17th and 18th centuries were marked by waves of Europeans seeking new beginnings in the Americas, driven by economic woes, religious persecution, and dreams of land and opportunity. Thus, for the Cabots and many others, America was a blank canvas on which to sketch a new family legacy, free from the old world's shackles. And upon their arrival, the Cabots quickly found their sea legs in Salem, turning their maritime heritage into a commercial empire. Therefore, the early 1700s saw the family commanding a fleet of ships engaged in trade and, on occasion, in the murkier waters of opium, rum, and slave transport. The Cabot family's involvement in trade was multifaceted, including legitimate business ventures as well as participation in the more controversial and morally dubious trades of opium, rum, and enslaved people. Their foray into the opium trade particularly underscored their role in broadening opium supply lines to China, a venture fraught with profit and geopolitical tensions. This endeavor, therefore, not only bolstered their coffers, but also nudged the British East India Company into protective stances, precipitating the Opium Wars as the Chinese sought to curb opium influx. Specifically, Charles Cabot, a sea captain from Boston, epitomized this audacious spirit, seeking opium in East India Company holdings to sell in eastern markets, aiming for the lucrative advantage of being first. Such maneuvers by the Cabots and other American traders significantly dented British dominance in the trade, especially in the Turkish opium sector, fostering the Malwa opium trade's expansion. Moreover, the Cabots' engagement with the rum trade was emblematic of their multifaceted business interests. You see, rum, distilled from Caribbean molasses, was a pivotal element of the triangular trade, linking the Americas to Europe and Africa in a complex web of commerce that included the sorrowful exchange of enslaved individuals and raw materials. Therefore, there is no denying that this trade system, in which the Cabots were deeply embedded, was a cornerstone of their wealth and influence. The Cabots' involvement in the slave trade thus marks a somber facet of their legacy. Figures like John and Joseph Cabot, though celebrated as astute merchants, also partook in the grievous trade of human lives. And this participation was not isolated, but part of the broader engagement of New England's elite in the transatlantic slave trade. Consequently, as maritime commerce flowed through the arteries of Boston's societal elite, the Cabots emerged as prominent figures, their shrewdness and enterprise anchoring them as titans of the shipping industry. It was from this foundation that the Cabots would, like so many old money families, leverage their way to the top of the political heap in Boston, starting with George Cabot, who we'll meet next. George Cabot's entry onto the political stage, born in 1752, marks a notable chapter in the Cabot family saga, and his journey further enriched the family's coffers, but his legacy is largely painted by his political endeavors. You see, George emerged as a pivotal figure within the Federalist Party, the Essex Junto, and the Hartford Convention, showcasing the Cabots' knack for intertwining with the nation's political threads. And his roles, particularly as a U.S. Senator from Massachusetts and the inaugural, albeit unwilling, Secretary of the Navy, highlight the Cabots' deep roots in America's political landscape. But their engagement in politics stretched beyond mere office holding to influencing the nation's trajectory, pushing for a robust federal government and policies that buoyed their commercial ventures. And in the social realms of the 19th century, the Cabot matriarchs embroidered philanthropy and community engagement into their legacy, stretching their influence well beyond the mere confines of wealth. These women, firmly interwoven into Boston's societal fabric, leveraged their positions not for idle luxury, but for spearheading social initiatives and championing community welfare. For example, Elizabeth Cabot, who married into this illustrious family, stands out for her commitment to social betterment, particularly in championing the welfare of children and the underprivileged. Her endeavors were not solitary gestures of kindness, but part of a wider crusade by women of her stature towards social reform, in an era when women's public roles were blossoming into significance. And in the healthcare landscape, the Cabot matriarchs played a pivotal role, particularly with their foundational support for the Massachusetts General Hospital. This institution stands as a pillar of medical excellence in the United States. Much of its early strength derived from the Cabot family's generosity and strategic guidance. Education, too, felt the touch of the Cabot matriarchs' generosity. Their unwavering support for institutions like Harvard University helped sculpt the educational fabric of the region. But their vision went beyond prestigious academia. They championed educational and vocational training for women, underpinning the belief that empowerment through education was crucial for societal advancement. But the Cabots also made their mark on the arts and culture, notably through contributions to the Boston Symphony Orchestra. Recognizing the essential role of arts in a thriving society, the Cabot matriarchs ensured Bostonians had access to unparalleled artistic and cultural experiences, viewing such endeavors not as mere embellishments, but as societal necessities. For instance, Godfrey Lowell Cabot's establishment of a charitable trust carried the family's philanthropic legacy into the 20th century and beyond, supporting an array of causes from the arts to health services. This enduring trust mirrored the Cabot matriarch's deep-seated commitment to societal enhancement, a legacy of philanthropy that cascaded through generations. Therefore, the Cabots' enduring influence, transcending their era, set a benchmark for the Boston elite and the Cabot descendants. Through their dedication to social causes and community well-being, they showcased how wealth, when guided by compassion and civic duty, becomes a potent force for social progress. Little did they know, however, that this is the same playbook that a then little-known Irish immigrant family would use to come to the absolute zenith of American power just a few years later. Which is where we meet the Kennedys in the next chapter. At the dawn of the 20th century, Massachusetts became the arena for an unfolding rivalry that would etch its way into the political annals of the state, starring two formidable families, the Cabots and the Kennedys. And this rivalry was not just a matter of electoral contests. It represented the clash of two distinct societal forces. On one side stood the Cabots, a name interwoven with the fabric of American history emblematic of the Boston Brahmin elite. This group, composed of old New England Protestant families, was celebrated for its long-standing influence in realms ranging from business to politics. Contrastingly, the Kennedys, a family of Irish Catholic immigrants, carved their path to prominence through political shrewdness, entrepreneurial spirit, and an indefatigable pursuit of achievement. The early political skirmishes between these dynasties transcended mere quests for office. They mirrored the broader societal and religious divisions of the era, with the Protestant establishment's old guard, epitomized by the Cabots, juxtaposed against the burgeoning political ambitions of the Irish Catholic faction, personified by the Kennedys. Thus, this rivalry was emblematic of the tectonic shifts in American society as newer immigrant groups vied for recognition and influence within the country's political and social weave. Now, a pivotal moment in this familial duel was the 1952 Senate race, a contest that not only highlighted the political ambitions of these families, but also underscored the evolving dynamics of American society. This election pitted John F. Kennedy, a vibrant, forward-looking Democrat with eyes set firmly on the future, against the aforementioned Republican incumbent Senator Henry Cabot Lodge, Jr., whose roots in Massachusetts politics and public service by then already ran deep. Specifically, Henry Cabot Lodge, Jr. had represented Massachusetts in the Senate since 1937, pausing only to serve in World War II. Returning to the Senate in 1947, he became a staunch advocate for internationalism, particularly amidst the Cold War's chill. And Lodge's tenure was marked by his support for a globalist foreign policy and his pivotal role in urging Dwight D. Eisenhower to run for the presidency under the Republican banner in 1952. Yet, despite his commendable track record and the weight of his family's name, Lodge found in John F. Kennedy an adversary whose family's rising star in American politics could not be underestimated. JFK, emerging from the burgeoning Kennedy clan, was the embodiment of a fresh tide in political leadership. His family's Irish Catholic heritage became a beacon for the dreams and aspirations of immigrant communities across the United States. And Kennedy's campaign strategy shone with ingenuity, harnessing his family's escalating financial might and knitting together a tapestry of support among Irish Catholics and other immigrant groups. Moreover, this election highlighted the transformative nature of political campaigning in America. Kennedy's proficient use of nascent media channels, coupled with his magnetic public persona and the strategic deployment of his family's assets, set a new benchmark for electoral campaigns. Thus, the 1952 Senate race emerged as a critical juncture reflecting deeper social and political transformations in post-war America, heralding a new chapter with the Kennedys at the forefront of national destiny shaping. But the narrative of the Cabots versus the Kennedys extended into the 1960 presidential race, again seeing Henry Cabot Lodge Jr. as Richard Nixon's running mate against John F. Kennedy. This rematch upped the ante to involve the nation's highest office, and after his shocking defeat, Henry Cabot Lodge Jr. brought an enlarged resume filled with more notable appointments, including U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. Despite his formidable background and the prestige of the Cabot name, the Lodge-Nixon ticket did not prevail, leading to a narrowly won Kennedy victory that would significantly impact both families and the broader American political landscape. Thus, Kennedy's ascendancy to the presidency in 1960 was a pivotal moment, propelling the Kennedys from national prominence to a dynastic stature within the heart of American politics. Then, in a twist of fate that seemed almost scripted for the annals of political history, the Cabot and Kennedy dynasties found themselves once again at the forefront of Massachusetts politics just 2 years post the iconic 1960 presidential election. Indeed, the 1962 United States Senate special election in Massachusetts set the stage for yet another face-off between these storied Boston families. You see, George Cabot Lodge II, a Republican, entered the fray against Edward M. Kennedy, the youngest scion of the Democratic Kennedy family, who was already basking in the glow of his brother's presidential success. But George C. Lodge, ironically the son of Henry Cabot Lodge Jr., faced the daunting prospect of challenging a Kennedy, having seen his father defeated by JFK in not just one, but 2 pivotal political battles over an 8-year span. George, however, was no stranger to the demands of public service. A veteran of the U.S. Navy and a Harvard College alumnus, Lodge had carved out a career as a political reporter and columnist before venturing into the federal civil service, culminating in his role as Assistant Secretary of Labor for International Affairs. Thus, his campaign was a blend of academic acumen and seasoned political insight. In the other corner, so to speak, Edward M. Ted Kennedy was thrust into the political limelight following his brother's vacating of the Senate seat for the presidency. And despite initial hesitations regarding his youth and relative inexperience, Ted Kennedy's campaign leveraged the Kennedy family's immense popularity and financial clout. His campaign's innovative tea parties, orchestrated by his mother, significantly bolstered his appeal, particularly among women voters. Therefore, the 1962 campaign trail was a spectacle of strategy and familial prestige. Lodge, conscious of his revered family background, steered clear of critiques centered on dynasty, instead positioning himself as a forward-thinking moderate Republican. Kennedy, meanwhile, tapped into the formidable Kennedy political machine, embarking on an exhaustive campaign tour across Massachusetts, aiming to reach voters in every corner of the state. However, despite Lodge's formidable efforts and political pedigree, the backdrop of the Cuban Missile Crisis and the soaring approval ratings of the Kennedy administration posed insurmountable challenges. Edward M. Kennedy emerged victorious, securing 55% of the vote to George Cabot Lodge's 41.85%, a win that not only extended the Kennedy political legacy, but also marked the third defeat of a Lodge by a Kennedy in less than a decade. The 1962 special elections reverberations were thus profound and lasting for both families and the broader American political landscape. Ted Kennedy's Senate career spanned nearly 5 decades, during which he championed significant legislation across civil rights, education, and healthcare, cementing his legacy as one of America's most influential legislators. George C. Lodge, on the other hand, transitioned to an illustrious academic career, making notable contributions to international economic development as a respected professor at Harvard Business School. As the Kennedys navigated the highs and lows of their public journey, the Cabots pivoted, focusing their energies on business and philanthropy, thereby carving out a new niche for themselves in American society. The Cabot lineage, a story woven into the very core of America's economic and political realms, charts a journey from their ascendancy as enterprising merchants engaging in the rum trade and the inhumane traffic of enslaved individuals, to their ventures into the lucrative opium market. Their prosperity and intricate network of connections propelled them to significant political heights, with figures like George Cabot steering the Federalist Party and the Hartford Convention. Marriages with other affluent Boston dynasties further solidified their position within the esteemed Brahmin class, a cadre of families wielding vast influence across Massachusetts and beyond. Yet, as the 1980s dawned, the tides of change swept across the United States. An era marked by economic upheaval, burgeoning social diversity, and pivotal political shifts, it heralded the decline of manufacturing stalwarts and the rise of the tech and service sectors. Therefore, this period saw the American social fabric becoming increasingly variegated, with shifting immigration patterns altering the demographic landscape, especially in regions like New England. The political arena, too, was in flux, characterized by the ideological shifts of the Cold War's twilight and the neoliberal wave under Reagan's presidency, reshaping governance and public discourse. Within this evolving backdrop, the Cabots and their peers faced diminishing traditional avenues of influence. The economic clout they once wielded was now contested by the fortunes amassed in the burgeoning tech and service industries. The societal leverage they enjoyed was thus diluted amidst the growing diversity and evolving societal norms. And politically, the emergence of a more polarized environment eroded the middle ground where the Cabots had historically exerted their sway. Confronted with these transformations, the Cabots endeavored to recalibrate and sustain their standing. They persisted in their philanthropic missions, directing their largesse towards education, healthcare, and cultural initiatives critical to America's societal framework. The Cabot Family Charitable Trust, for example, emerged as a testament to their adaptive strategy, focusing its efforts on bridging the gaps left by other programs and addressing the needs of a diversifying community. Through these endeavors, the Cabots sought to navigate the shifting sands of time, aiming to preserve their legacy amidst the changing tides of American society, economy, and politics. Frank Cabot, a descendant endowed with the family's financial wit, veered from the conventional route of finance to forge a significant mark in horticulture and garden conservation. Born in August 1925 in New York City, his life's work would become a symbol of a profound shift from finance to the forefront of garden preservation. For example, in 1989 he founded the Garden Conservancy, a beacon for safeguarding America's horticultural jewels, safeguarding nearly 100 gardens across the country. Parallel to this verdant legacy, the Cabots' prowess in real estate development through the aforementioned Cabot, and Forbes cemented their influence in shaping urban landscapes. Since its inception in 1904, the firm has been a cornerstone in the creation of over 100 million square feet of commercial space, molding the skyline with Boston landmarks such as 1 Boston Place and 60 State Street. Consequently, the endeavors of individuals like Frank Cabot, alongside the family's ventures in real estate, paint a picture of a family that adeptly merges tradition with innovation. As they steer through the currents of change, their enduring commitment to enhancing both the natural and built environment ensures their legacy flourishes, contributing to the societal tapestry with each passing generation. In a grand study awash with flickering shadows, Andrew Carnegie sits at a dark mahogany desk. The room is nearly dark, save for the small circle of light cast by an ornate oil lamp. The year is 1889, and outside the window the Pittsburgh steel mills are ablaze, lighting up the night sky like the stars glimmering above the Scotsman's palatial estate. However, inside, a different kind of inferno burns. It is the fire of an idea that will change the course of American history. With a clenched jaw and eyes gleaming with resolve, Carnegie leans forward, gripping his quill as if it were a sword. As he scribbles intently, he hesitates suddenly, feeling the weight of the next sentence. After taking in a deep, reflective breath, the magnate finally writes his declaration for the ages. The man who dies rich, dies disgraced. Relieved, Carnegie puts down his pen, contemplating the magnitude of the words he has just committed to paper. It is indeed a declaration that will reverberate through generations, shaking the foundations of American capitalism. Now, in our 21st century economic climate, the concept of old money signifies not just wealth, but the enduring legacy of families who have maintained and even greatly expanded their fortunes for generations. But what happens when a family intentionally breaks this cycle of generational wealth and gives away their billions on purpose, thus consciously pushing their status back down to the middle class? In this episode of Old Money Luxury, we will explore this exact enigma. Guided by the ideology of their patriarch, Andrew Carnegie, the Carnegie family went from amassing a colossal fortune that, for a time, crowned him the world's richest man, to strategically giving away more than $5.6 billion in today's currency. With that mystifying prelude as a backdrop, join us as we now recount the entire saga and describe how the Carnegies went from old money to no money. Our journey first begins on the misty lanes of Dunfermline, Scotland, where Andrew Carnegie first saw the light of day in 1835. Born to no ordinary family, young Andrew's lineage was steeped in the humble craft of weaving, a tradition nourished by his father, William Carnegie, and his paternal grandfather. The maternal side of his family tree branched off in a different direction. Andrew's mother, Margaret Morrison Carnegie, hailed from a line deeply involved in tanning and shoemaking. However, she was not merely a homemaker, but rather the daughter of George Lauder, a political stalwart who ensured young Andrew's mind was sparked by the heroics of Scottish legends like Robert the Bruce, Rob Roy, and William Wallace. The Carnegie family's daily life was framed by the quaintness of their weaver's cottage and the looming presence of the Industrial Revolution, a transformative period that remodeled Scotland's social fabric and economic vitality. Dunfermline itself was a hub of textile manufacturing, but the family's fortunes dimmed as factory systems replaced traditional handlooms. This decline subjected weavers like William Carnegie to financial hardships, casting shadows of poverty over their lives. Yet, William was not just a weaver caught in the crossfire of industrialization. He was a passionate advocate of the Chartist movement, which called for broad political and social reforms. On the other side, Margaret Morrison Carnegie's family was also politically active, adding another layer to Andrew's inherent views on social responsibility. But how did the teenaged Andrew navigate through a world shifting under his feet? The answer lies in his relentless pursuit of self-education. Formal schooling took a back seat as Andrew leaned into books and night school, supported by a family tradition that valued intellectual rigor and political activism. Libraries became his sanctuaries, thanks to Uncle George's introductions to literary masterpieces and historical narratives. These early experiences seeded his lifelong love for libraries and a philanthropic fervor to construct these reservoirs of knowledge across English-speaking countries. But Scotland's Industrial Revolution would soon not just alter the nation's economy, it would birth complex societal structures, trigger urban migration, and lead to governmental reforms. Amidst this tumult, it became clear that the Carnegie family needed to seek greener pastures. And to that, the burgeoning magnetic allure of the American dream, the notion that in the United States you can make it big through sheer grit and enterprise. And we arrive at the year 1848, when the Carnegies decide to pack up their hopes and dreams, cross the Atlantic, and settle in Allegheny City, Pennsylvania. Here, they would hope to find not just economic sustenance, but a stage upon which young Andrew could shape his indomitable destiny. Now, the Carnegie family had deliberately chosen Allegheny, the budding industrial suburb of Pittsburgh, for its abundant economic prospects. During this period, in the mid-19th century, America was a crucible of change, fueled by manifest destiny and the California gold rush of 1849. The nation itself was also on the cusp of an industrial revolution, transitioning from agricultural simplicity to industrial complexity. Allegheny specifically was a mosaic of diverse communities, including Germans and Croats, and offered a plethora of job opportunities in sectors like commercial trading, meatpacking, and leather tanning. However, despite these favorable conditions, the Carnegies faced initial hardships. William Carnegie's weaving business faltered, forcing 13-year-old Andrew into the laborious role of a bobbin boy in a cotton mill, where he would work 72-hour weeks for a modest $1.20 per hour, roughly $168 a month in today's currency. But not one to be confined by menial tasks, Andrew navigated through a series of roles that laid the foundation for his later empire. Positions such as messenger, secretary, and telegraph operator for the Pennsylvania Railroad served as an informal education in corporate structure and strategy. His affiliation with the railroad industry was particularly instructive. It offered lessons in management and cost optimization, as well as invaluable connections with industry giants like Thomas A. Scott and J. Edgar Thompson. These associations helped Carnegie secure early ventures like the Keystone Bridge Company, critical to the railway infrastructure. Subsequently, the Civil War amplified Carnegie's already diversifying portfolio, especially with his stake in the Columbia Oil Company. The conflict skyrocketed demand for both iron and oil, boosting his profits. Although eligible for military service, he opted to pay a substitute $850, or roughly 20,000 modern dollars, to enlist in his stead, a common practice among the affluent. And by the early 1870s, Carnegie had diversified his investments across a broad spectrum. His real breakthrough came in 1873, with the recognition of steel's untapped potential. Notably, he initiated the construction of the Edgar Thompson Works in Braddock, Pennsylvania, a groundbreaking facility introducing the Bessemer steelmaking process to America. Costing an estimated $1.2 million, or roughly $30 million in modern currency, the mill was a high-stakes bet on an unproven sector. Yet the gamble yielded significant dividends, as the facility didn't just elevate steel production standards, it fundamentally altered the fabric of American industry. In the years following, Carnegie further expanded and integrated his business holdings, including significant assets like the Scotia ore mines, Union iron mills, and Lucy furnaces. This methodical combination of resources and production capacities set the stage for the emergence of the powerhouse that became Carnegie Steel Company in 1889. Now, by the dawn of the 1890s, Andrew Carnegie was firmly established as an industrial colossus, presiding over a domain that extended well beyond the furnaces of his steel operations. His Carnegie Steel Company was the bedrock of global steel production, redefining benchmarks for both efficiency and profit. During his financial peak, Carnegie was an indomitable force in American enterprise, amassing his immense wealth chiefly through steel production endeavors. His holdings were extensive, comprising a diverse array of investments from lucrative real estate to varied business ventures. One significant acquisition was Scotland's Skibo Castle in 1899, which he transformed into a tranquil retreat, far from the industrial hustle. You see, Carnegie's monumental success was rooted in two pillars: innovative techniques and shrewd business acumen. His playbook included various methods aimed at ensuring Carnegie Steel remained an industry leader. Vertical integration, strategic mergers, and an uncompromising attention to cost efficiency were among them. For example, vertical integration was foundational to his business approach. He took ownership of entities along different stages of the steel-making process, from iron ore mines to railway companies. This end-to-end control enabled him to dramatically lower production costs while simultaneously optimizing operations for greater efficiency. His expansionary ambitions were further realized through mergers and acquisitions, notably the union of assets with H.C. Frick and Company in 1892. This move fortified the Carnegie Steel Company, giving him greater leverage over both the marketplace and the supply chain. An unwavering dedication to operational efficiency led him to adopt the Bessemer process, significantly quickening steel production while driving down costs. This made steel more affordable and accessible, altering the American landscape by facilitating the construction of bridges, skyscrapers, and expansive railway systems. However, this zeal for efficiency occasionally came at the cost of labor welfare. The introduction of cutting-edge technology and methods often preceded adequate safety measures. This tension came to a head in the Homestead Strike of 1892, a violent skirmish between workers and management that resulted in 12 deaths and created an enduring fissure between labor and leadership. Henry Clay Frick, who was the muscle of Carnegie Steel at the time, instigated the conflict through wage reductions. While Carnegie was geographically removed, quietly waiting back in Scotland, he had empowered Frick to act unilaterally, leading to a violent standoff that left an indelible scar on his otherwise storied legacy. Indeed, this harrowing incident triggered a significant self-reckoning for Carnegie, ultimately inspiring his gospel of wealth philosophy. This ideological shift diverged markedly from his peers' prevailing perspectives, emphasizing not just the ownership, but also the ethical stewardship of wealth. Published initially in 1889, the thesis proposed that affluence carried a moral duty to benefit society at large. Transitioning from theory to action, Carnegie would subsequently channel his resources into philanthropy, laying the groundwork for educational institutions, public libraries, and other community-focused entities. However, his philanthropic masterstroke would first need an exit strategy from the rough-and-tumble business world of industrial age America, and therefore he would need a powerful ally to help strategically guide him out of the corridors of ruthless Gilded Age finance. Now, at the turn of the 20th century, when the American steel industry was the backbone of a rapidly modernizing economy, legendary financier and Machiavellian businessman J.P. Morgan saw an unparalleled opportunity. Steel was not just a commodity, it was the lifeblood of industrializing cities, the burgeoning auto industry, and wartime production during World War I. By acquiring Carnegie Steel, Morgan could craft the United States Steel Corporation in his image, a monolithic entity that at the time was the world's largest company. This acquisition enabled Morgan to corner the steel market and exploit the soaring demand for this vital resource. Thus, the 1901 sale of Carnegie Steel to J.P. Morgan for an astonishing $480 million, equivalent to over $13 billion in today's money, was more than just a business transaction. It provided Andrew Carnegie with the financial muscle to massively escalate his philanthropic activities, in sync with his own moral guidelines encapsulated in his gospel of wealth. With this philosophy as his North Star and seemingly endless cash in the bank after the sale of his empire, Carnegie proclaimed that the affluent were morally obligated to disperse their wealth in their lifetime, and this sale armed him with the capital to make a transformative societal impact. Carnegie's subsequent largesse left an indelible mark on multiple sectors: education, peace initiatives, and scientific research, to name a few. Among his most enduring contributions were the Carnegie Libraries, a global network of more than 2,500 public libraries. Indeed, his advocacy for public libraries came at an opportune moment when the American public library system was in its nascent stage, meeting the growing need for accessible knowledge. Consequently, these libraries were a catalyst for education and self-improvement across diverse populations, and they ushered in a new era of knowledge democratization. Local communities soon became the financial pillars of these libraries, providing about 80% of public funding. Furthermore, Carnegie's focus on libraries spurred a ripple effect, inspiring other local philanthropists to invest in their communities. These libraries were not just buildings filled with books. They were innovation hubs that enriched their localities and continue to serve their communities today. Beyond libraries, Carnegie's financial legacy led to the founding of educational behemoths like Carnegie Mellon University, an institution renowned for its contributions to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Additionally, Carnegie Hall in New York City stands as an emblem of his patronage in the arts. This iconic concert venue has been a stage for countless musical legends and continues to uphold its reputation as an architectural and cultural jewel. However, the sale of Carnegie Steel also had ramifications for Carnegie's personal fortune. In keeping with his views on wealth dispersion, Carnegie systematically drained nearly all of his family's financial reservoirs. Now, in 1919, Andrew Carnegie's death led to a circumspect distribution of his considerable assets, personal belongings, a financial endowment, and real estate properties, among them a New York City townhouse and a Scottish vacation home. His spouse, Louise Whitfield Carnegie, a New York native, had encountered Andrew at the age of 23, thanks to her father. The two marked in 1887 at an intimate ceremony, subsequent to Louise signing a prenuptial contract that waived any future claim on Andrew's wealth. And Louise, frequently depicted as a person of kindness and moral caliber, had a prominent role in Andrew's altruistic pursuits as a board member of the Carnegie Corporation. Following Andrew's demise, she remained an active participant in the family's philanthropic ventures. Margaret Carnegie Miller, their sole child, inherited a modest trust fund, compelling the family to part with the Manhattan residence due to maintenance expenses. Born and raised in New York City, Margaret wed Roswell Miller Jr. in 1919. They had 4 offspring before their marriage disintegrated in 1953. Margaret served on the board of the Carnegie Corporation from 1934 until 1973 and remained an honorary trustee for life until her passing in 1990. Now, the 13 subsequent descendants of Andrew Carnegie have not accumulated billionaire status, but have thrived within the financial bracket of accomplished middle-class to upper-middle-class professionals. Investments in diverse sectors like real estate and technology have been judiciously managed. Philanthropy, too, is an enduring family hallmark. William Thompson, a great-grandson, exemplifies this, having navigated personal setbacks, such as his mother Louise's polio, to perpetuate the family's charitable legacy. As former chair and honorary president of the Carnegie UK Trust, he oversaw the yearly allocation of £1 million to assorted causes. Admirably, in the 21st century era of intense public scrutiny and a mass media obsession with wealth, the Carnegies have kept impressively low profiles. Thorough internet searches on their lives reveal little. Social media platforms are devoid of family references, to the point where it's unlikely you'll find pictures of, or even the full names of, many living Carnegie family members. Such obscurity is indeed cultivated and cherished by this legendary clan, reflecting their old money ethos that prioritizes discretion over publicity. Where new money types may seek public affirmation through visible philanthropy or social media, the Carnegies exemplify different ethics. They have opted for a near-invisible public persona, contrasting sharply with the transparent lifestyles common among contemporary wealthy individuals. The preservation of privacy has thus become a family trait, and it adds another dimension to an already multifaceted family narrative. Andrew Carnegie was a public figure, but his heirs have largely retreated from the spotlight and the headlines, exemplifying a thoughtful navigation between the twin demands of affluence and social responsibility in today's world. Peering through an oppressive cloak of fog during the somber twilight hours of New York City in the year 1947, there looms an imposing spectre, the decaying Vanderbilt Triple Palace. Once a shining beacon of grandeur and prosperity, it now echoes with the hushed whispers of a forgotten splendor. In its heyday, the palace glistened like a diamond under the opulent glow of gaslit chandeliers. Rooms were decked with European art, while gilded mirrors reflected the refined tastes of the era's elite. The echoes of laughter, clinking crystal, and impassioned debates filled the grand halls, all bearing testimony to the meteoric rise of the Vanderbilt dynasty. However, the current visage of the Triple Palace was an unnerving contrast. Its decadent opulence had faded, traded for an ominous air of dereliction. The silent corridors now reeked of neglect and abandonment. The imposing structure that epitomized luxury now bore the scars of time and indifference, a granite edifice teetering on the brink of oblivion. Pondering such a heart-wrenching image, one might ask, how did this majestic empire collapse, surrendering its palatial grandeur to time's merciless grasp? Join us on this intriguing journey to answer your query, as we embark on an expedition to once and for all explain how the Vanderbilt family went from old money to no money. The dawn of the 19th century unveiled a new titan in the American commercial narrative, a man by the name of Cornelius Vanderbilt, affectionately known as the Commodore. His tale opens in the rugged setting of Staten Island, New York, in 1794. Birthed forth in a lineage of 9, young Cornelius was cast in the forge of humility, born into an environment of limited means. Looking back through history, the seeds of the Vanderbilt legacy can be traced to De Bilt, nestled in the heart of Utrecht, Netherlands. Here, Jan Ertzen, Cornelius's great-great-great-grandfather, and a humble Dutch farmer, sought a new life in New Amsterdam, the city that would eventually bear the name New York. In an amazing twist of fate, this ancestor of one of America's wealthiest dynasties came to the New World not only penniless, but was forced into indentured servitude upon his arrival in 1650. However, his back-breaking work would turn out to be the sacrifice that set the Vanderbilt legacy in motion. His village name, suffixed by the Dutch Vander, translated to "of the built," eventually morphed over generations into the weighty name of Vanderbilt. Now, the inception of Cornelius's empire was marked at the tender age of 16, as he gambled on a ferry service operation between Staten Island and Manhattan, funded by a loan of $100 from his mother. This modest venture bloomed into a colossal fortune exceeding $100 million, a staggering sum that today's standards would value over $200 billion. Cornelius Vanderbilt, a figure cast in the mold of determination and intelligence, etched his path to prosperity through an inexhaustible work ethic and shrewd business maneuvering. His simple ferry service expanded its reach during the tumultuous times of the War of 1812, serving the far-flung government outposts strewn around New York City. As peace was restored, Vanderbilt shifted his sights to the steamship industry, aligning himself with the strategic acumen of Thomas Gibbons. Possessing an innate radar for identifying opportunities within fledgling markets, Vanderbilt seized control of the steamboat and nascent railroad industries, effectively transforming the American landscape. In particular, his strategic mastery lay in his ability to grow markets, outmaneuvering competition through offering accessible prices and exploring untapped territories. He built his businesses on the burgeoning pillars of customer satisfaction, efficiency, frugality, and uncompromising consequences for dishonesty or idleness. And even better, this agile titan was no stranger to industry evolution. His adaptability became evident when he smoothly transitioned from steamboats to railroads. Not merely content with business savvy, Vanderbilt was also a ruthless competitor, infamous for his aggressive tactics in obliterating competition. And with regard to his temperament, as a man of few words, Vanderbilt was esteemed for his impeccable judgment of character. He often remained stoic in the face of criticism, steadfast in his decisions, his unyielding determination and adaptability. This drive allowed him to amass a formidable fortune, crowning him as one of the wealthiest Americans of the 19th century. In fact, his lifestyle could be described as having an even Spartan-like frugality, a trait inherited from his mother. This very deliberate lifestyle choice marked him as an outlier, creating a tangible rift between himself and the glittering upper echelons of high society. Yet, unbeknownst to the Commodore, a dramatic shift loomed on the horizon. His descendants, heirs to the Vanderbilt fortune, would cast away their patriarch's doctrine of frugality. They instead embraced a life dripping with extravagance and opulence, casting aside the lessons of their forebear and eventually, as the kids today would say, fumbling the bag. You see, their actions would signal a stark departure from Cornelius's principles, setting the stage for a story of epic downfall and squandered wealth. A tale as grand as their inheritance, filled with missteps, excesses, and lavish spending that would threaten the very existence of the Vanderbilt fortune. With the arsenal of family lineage and robust wealth at their disposal, one could imagine the Vanderbilts flourishing as an enduring emblem of American old money. Yet, in an unexpected twist of fate, Cornelius Vanderbilt's descendants took a nosedive into the realms of opulence and luxurious excess. The precursor to this ill-fated journey was William Henry Vanderbilt, Cornelius's son. Despite his pedigree, he failed to instill the old money ethos into his 8 offspring, arguably raising several who were, alas, spoiled brats beyond measure. In his personal life, William managed to amass an estate worth $200 million by the time of his demise in 1885, doubling his father's empire. However, whispers of his volatile temperament and emotional inconsistency cast a shadow over his accomplishments, and likely hint at how he would come to raise a generation of intemperate progeny. Early anecdotes recount tales reminiscent of HBO's Succession, portraying the relationship between William and his father, Cornelius, akin to that of Logan Roy and Kendall Roy. Cornelius, often frustrated with his eldest son, called him a blockhead and blatherskite. William yearned to prove otherwise, but lacked the courage to face the Commodore's censure. However, a turning point arrived during a family voyage to Europe aboard the steamship Vanderbilt in 1860. Following this trip, father and son grew closer, and William assumed an increasingly integral role in the Vanderbilt business empire. Yet, once at the helm, William's unpredictable nature became a public nuisance. One incident in particular occurred in 1883, when journalist John Dickinson Sherman questioned him about his operation of the limited express train service. One incident in particular occurred in 1883. To a question about whether the trains were run for public convenience, William retorted, "The public be damned." This outburst reflected the growing detachment of the Vanderbilt lineage from the principles of their patriarch. Upon the demise of William Henry Vanderbilt, the family's financial leviathan passed into the hands of his sons, Cornelius Vanderbilt II and William Kissam Vanderbilt. This heralded a new era in the dynasty's narrative, one marked by an increasingly convoluted distribution of wealth. The vast Vanderbilt fortune, once a concentrated reservoir of wealth, began to spread thin across an ever-growing family tree. With each passing generation, the inheritance split among a growing number of descendants. As family branches multiplied, the division of assets exacerbated, gradually diluting the individual shares of the once enormous family wealth. Simultaneously, the formidable grasp of inheritance taxes began to gnaw at the edges of the family's fortune. As one generation passed and handed down their wealth to the next, each transfer was met with sizable tax implications. Over time, these seemingly harmless nibbles transformed into significant bites out of the family coffers. The shadow of such financial burdens grew longer with each subsequent generation, steadily eroding the formidable Vanderbilt fortune. Worse still, the family was plagued by a series of reckless financial choices. Much of the Vanderbilt progeny, far removed from the industrious ethos of their forebear, failed to demonstrate the same business acumen and financial prudence that Cornelius Vanderbilt had once embodied. High-risk ventures, failed investments, and a lack of interest in nurturing the family's business interests dealt a series of devastating blows to their wealth. Compounding this was their inclination towards a luxurious lifestyle. Unlike the Commodore, the descendants reveled in extravagance and opulence. They spent prodigiously, indulging in grand mansions, ostentatious parties, and lavish art collections. Such unrestrained spending only served to accelerate the decline of the once mighty Vanderbilt fortune. This combination of expanding family size, punishing inheritance taxes, imprudent financial decisions, and unabated spending cast a foreboding shadow over the Vanderbilt dynasty. The fortune, once a titan in the annals of American wealth, gradually began its descent into oblivion. By the mid-20th century, the Vanderbilt star had considerably dimmed in the American public sphere, as evidenced by the fate of their grand Fifth Avenue mansions, many of which were sold, demolished, or repurposed as museums. A mere 30 years post Cornelius Vanderbilt's death, not a single Vanderbilt was listed among the wealthiest Americans. Tragically, within half a century of the Commodore's passing, the vast Vanderbilt fortune had entirely evaporated. Now, let us delve deeper into the distinctive factors that precipitated the decline of the Vanderbilt wealth and juxtapose it with a family that, despite amassing wealth during the same era, managed to sustain it through generations. To understand the contrasts, let's first consider a hypothetical scenario. Imagine a dominant figure at the helm of a multi-billion-dollar family empire suddenly succumbing to illness. The CEO, who doesn't belong to the family, has handpicked a COO as his successor. Yet the board remains divided in its support. The company's financial health is waning, prompting board anxieties. Without the board's unanimous backing, exploring alternative CEO candidates becomes imperative. Further convoluting matters is the greenhorn board chair, a family member with another family member and controlling shareholder expecting this chair to ascend as the next CEO. This scenario may seem unusual, but in the world of family-owned businesses, finding a successor is a complex labyrinth. The Vanderbilt family's story mirrors this scenario. The dispersion of their fortune during the third generation corresponded with diminishing family interest in their key asset, the New York Central, coupled with escalating expenses. The Vanderbilts were known for their philanthropy, especially William Kissam Vanderbilt of the third generation, who donated millions to numerous causes. Yet, the dawn of income and estate taxes and the family's incessant spending hastened their wealth's decline. During the initial stages of their wealth accumulation, there was a minimal business regulatory framework, allowing them a free hand in dominating entire industries. The era they thrived in was marked by an absence of income and estate taxes, which meant that the Vanderbilts were able to amass an unimaginable fortune free of governmental restrictions or financial drains. However, as societal norms and governmental policies evolved, the Vanderbilts found themselves facing new challenges. This era also saw an increased regulatory focus on monopolies and business practices, adding another layer of complexity to maintaining and growing their fortune. Further exacerbating this situation was the Great Depression, which wreaked havoc on the American economy. It affected the Vanderbilts' investments and economic interests, leading to a significant downturn in their fortunes. The Rockefeller family, conversely, employed shrewd strategies to safeguard their wealth. John D. Rockefeller's business, via generation-skipping trusts, ensured wealth propagation through the generations. A generation-skipping trust allows the transfer of substantial amounts of money tax-free, skipping a generation, usually passing from the grantor to the grandchildren, rather than the children. In the Rockefellers' case, they managed to retain and multiply their wealth by channeling it down to more distant generations, rather than distributing it among immediate successors. Now, if you'd like to hear more specifics about the Rockefeller family's rags to riches story, be sure to click the video on the right-hand corner of the screen, or visit the video description box below to hear our deep dive on that dynasty's fascinating tale. The Vanderbilts, however, after a few generations, lacked an established core business that could continuously feed wealth into their trust. Their approach primarily involved the passing of assets directly from parent to child in each generation. This strategy not only exposed their wealth to the successive imposition of estate taxes with each generational transfer, but also made their fortune vulnerable to the lavish spending habits of each inheritor. The Rockefellers, by structuring their wealth transfer through a generation-skipping trust, managed to avoid these pitfalls and ensure the long-term preservation of their family's wealth. And what else set the Rockefellers apart? David Rockefeller Jr., chairman of Rockefeller and Company, in a rare interview, spoke of a system of values, traditions, and institutions developed by the family. These mechanisms aided the family in staying united and preserving their wealth, serving as practical tools for any family trying to instill sound monetary values in their children. Remarkably, the Rockefeller family largely remained unified, devoid of public scandals, feuds, lawsuits, or tragedies that typically plague wealthy dynasties. Today, over 250 direct descendants of John D. Rockefeller and Laura Spelman Rockefeller form the family. We meet as a family twice a year, often more than 100 of us in a room for a Christmas lunch, for example, said David Rockefeller. From the age of 21, family members are invited to these gatherings, aptly called the Family Forum. Here they discuss the family's direction, new members, career news, and other significant milestones. They ensure everyone feels part of the family, including those who married into it. Preserving the family history is also deemed essential. The Rockefellers do this through their familial homesteads, places passed down over generations, where they can reconnect with their past. I can go back to the place where my great-grandfather lived over 100 years ago and see how he lived and see how his son and their grandchildren lived, added David Rockefeller. Such practices exemplify the different approaches two similarly wealthy families took to wealth preservation. The Vanderbilt legacy today is a fascinating tale of resilience, adaptation, and lessons learned from the rise and fall of one of America's wealthiest families. Despite the family's difficulties and the decline of their once vast fortune, some members of the Vanderbilt family have managed to create their own paths and leave lasting impressions on society. Gloria Vanderbilt, a descendant of the Vanderbilt family, faced a difficult life marked by personal tragedies and challenges. Born in 1924, she was the daughter of Reginald Claypool Vanderbilt and Gloria Morgan Vanderbilt. At a young age, Gloria was thrust into the spotlight during a highly publicized custody battle between her mother and her paternal aunt, Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney. Despite these early hardships, Gloria went on to become a highly respected and successful artist, fashion designer, and author. Her resilience and determination to forge her own path endeared her to the public and made her a beloved figure. Throughout her life, Gloria Vanderbilt was not only a colorful but also a very successful personality who made many contributions to the society in which she lived and thrived. She was an exceptional, vivacious fashion icon, renowned for her distinctive style and the widely successful Vanderbilts brand. In a fascinating aside, one of our followers at Old Money Luxury shared a personal interaction with Gloria Vanderbilt, recalling, "I met Gloria Vanderbilt at her New York art show in 2003. She was elegant, well-bred, polite, soft-spoken, and greeted me with a big smile on her face. Her hair, makeup, clothes were impeccable and understated. Her teeth and complexion were perfect. I'm so glad I met her. I've read her books. She lived appropriately. She was an iconic figure who needed protection from devious people." At her level of wealth, she had friendships with designers, actors, singers, lawyers, professors, business people with education and talent. She loved her sons deeply. Gloria's sons, Anderson Cooper and Carter Vanderbilt Cooper, also faced their share of challenges growing up as Vanderbilt descendants. Anderson Cooper, a well-known journalist and television personality, has spoken openly about the impact of his family's history on his life and career. He has expressed gratitude for the opportunities his family's legacy has afforded him, while also acknowledging the importance of hard work and self-reliance. Tragically, Carter Vanderbilt Cooper passed by his own hand at the age of 23, a devastating loss for the family. The current financial situation of the Vanderbilt descendants varies, as the once enormous family fortune has been significantly diminished over the years. Many of the family's descendants have pursued careers in various fields, from journalism to fashion, and have built their own wealth and success independent of the family's legacy. The family's remaining assets and lingering influence can still be seen in the form of their historic mansions, such as the Biltmore Estate in Asheville, North Carolina, and the Breakers in Newport, Rhode Island. These properties serve as reminders of the family's immense wealth and influence during the Gilded Age, and continue to attract visitors from around the world. The rise and fall of the Vanderbilts offers valuable lessons for future generations. The importance of responsible wealth management, strategic estate planning, and the potential pitfalls of excessive spending and poor investment decisions are all evident in the family's story. Additionally, the Vanderbilt legacy serves as a reminder of the importance of resilience and adaptability in the face of adversity.